My name's Rhys, and today I'd like to talk to you about personalisation. Let's start with a statistic. So, a study by Cloud IQ found that 64% of customers expect an individualised experience. Now, I love a good survey as much as the next person, but probably you weren't that surprised by that. I certainly wasn't. This is instinctive that customers expect an individualised experience. And when I thought about this a bit more, I tried to break it down and understand what does this really mean. And I think we can boil it down to three things. That customers expect to be remembered, to feel understood, and to be in control. But this isn't some new, recently emerging internet behaviour, it's just human nature. People want to be remembered, understood, and in control. So why then do so many brands communicate to people like this? It took me about 30 seconds to find this example in my inbox. This is from Binance, but it could be any other company. And this is an email I received the other day. It's talking to me about going back to school. It's calling me a Binancean. I have no idea what that is. It's talking to me about euros. I live in the UK. And it's talking about my continued support. I don't think I've logged into their platform for over 2 years. Maybe I'm just picky, but this email didn't resonate with me at all. And I call this kind of communication population communication. The audience is singular, you've got one message, and you're delivering one experience. And when you're engaging in one-to-one communication, this needs to stop. Activity like this isn't just off-putting for your customers, but it's likely actively damaging the relationship you have with them. In case in point, I actually closed my account about 5 minutes after reading that email. So one step up from this population communication is this idea of personas, which I'm sure many of you are already using. You split your audience into a handful of archetypes or personas and then craft the content, the creative and the digital experiences around them. And this is a really important and effective staple of marketing. A really good example of where you see this sort of creating content for personas pop up is with a lot of software as a service websites. This is Google Cloud Platform, for example. You can look in their menu and you can self-select the type of customer or the segment that you're in. And that's great, but what I really want to talk about today is the next step on from this, personalisation. And that's because not a lot of brands are doing that well. And where brands aren't doing that well, there's huge opportunity for you to make money. And done well, personalisation helps you own the relationship with the customer and prevents you from having to repeatedly reacquire the same customer time after time at great expense to you through the auction, as Adam was describing earlier. But personalisation is quite a hot topic right now, so naturally there is some variation in what people expect it is and how people perceive it. So I think it's worth us going through a quick overview of what personalisation is. I personally feel that it's been sort of elevated to some kind of mythical status and made to feel very complicated or out of reach to all but the most technically savvy of organisations. But actually, the majority of most effective personalisation examples are things that we take for granted as users. And that's because good personalisation is subtle. I'll show you what I mean. I find that the best way to understand how personalisation affects users is to try and imagine a completely impersonal experience. So a nice easy example, this is the Amazon homepage. If I'm not logged in, this is what it shows me. It shows me dresses. I'm not really in the market for dresses or watches down the bottom, and I've already got a ton of pots and pans. It's not a horrible experience, but it's not particularly relevant or compelling for me. If I log in, it will show me things that I've looked at, movies I might like based on things I've watched before, products that are on my wish list if I want to treat myself, and categories that I tend to buy, which is a much more interesting experience for me personally. You can see Matt there laughing at the fact I'm being recommended Taylor Swift. She's a hero, she can do no wrong. But that's quite an easy, it's easy to pick Amazon and say, oh, look how great the personalisation is. But imagine something as simple as an order confirmation. People expect huge levels of personalisation here. This is one from Amazon telling me what I've ordered, when it's going to arrive, and even helpfully suggest a few things down the bottom that I may have forgotten to buy at this time. If you strip this back and try and imagine this with no personalisation, it's really clear what an impact it can have. This email here is essentially saying, dear customer, thank you for placing an order. We'll deliver it soon. Please come again. It's not a very reassuring experience for a user because they don't feel remembered, understood, or in control. So my take on personalisation is that it's simply just applying knowledge of your customer to deliver rewarding experiences. And in the coming slides, I'll talk about laying the foundations of effective website personalisation, but personalised experiences can take place across numerous different channels, including digital media, email, and direct mail. So why do so many brands struggle with getting off the ground with personalisation? If it's about customer data, every organisation I've ever worked with has had a whole wealth of customer data. So why do they struggle so much? And I think that part of it is this misconception that personalisation means knowing everything about every single one of your customers, predicting exactly what they want, and then delivering them that exact unique experience that nobody else will ever see. That's not quite the case. Personalisation can't always deliver a flawless experience for every user, but it can provide enough of a nudge in the right direction that it makes your experience a cut above the rest. Truthfully, and in reality, you can't know every customer, so developing a personalised experience requires a combination of all of these different communication styles to nurture a customer, or to nurture customer relationships and incrementally deliver more personalised experiences to more users as you learn more about them. So how then do we actually implement a personalised experience? This is where I see a lot of brands struggling. Most brands I work with aren't short for ideas of personalisation. They know what they would like to do, but struggle with the underlying technology that is required to deliver effective personalisation. I'd imagine almost everybody here has had some kind of experience with a testing tool, something like Google Optimize, VWO, or Optimizely. And these tools are fantastic for delivering personalised experiences too. We're increasingly seeing a lot of movement from the likes of Google and Optimizely to be seen as personalisation tools, not just A/B testing tools. However, when you first get your hands on one of these tools, you fire it up and you go, brilliant, let's create a personalised campaign. These are the kind of targeting parameters you're left with, and they leave quite a lot to be desired. Knowing roughly where your user's located or the browser that they're using isn't particularly useful for personalisation. And at this point, you might be tempted to kind of dip your toe in the water and test something just because you can. You've got your hands on this tool, but unfortunately, the changes you're able to make with this kind of data are often quite superficial to the customer experience, and the results are pretty underwhelming. And that's because useful personalisation comes from information like, has this person bought from me before? How many times have they bought from me before? Are they a valuable customer? What products do they already own? And the problem with the targeting parameters like the one shown here is that they don't tell you anything about a customer's history. The reason for this, and I apologize, it's going to get a little bit technical now, but the internet is stateless. By design, it doesn't remember you, it doesn't know who you are, and each time you load a page, as far as the browser is concerned, it's the first time you've ever been on the internet. Now, to personalize effectively, you need stateful data. You need information about a customer's lifetime value or their history, or the date of their last purchase. You could use things like cookies to store that information, but storing potentially sensitive customer data in a cookie is a big no-no. And that's where this idea of the data layer comes in. So this is kind of my number one thing that I feel is required for an organization to get a personalization program successfully off the ground. For those of you who work with tag management systems, things like Google Tag Manager or Telium, will already be familiar with data layers, but for those who aren't, a data layer is something you can build into your web pages that holds structured information about the current context. And that context might be the page, about the application they're using, or the current user who's browsing the page. It's not visible to users, but it provides a really easy way to access information from all the variety of marketing tools that are on your website. So in this example here is the RocketMill website on the left-hand side. That's what the user sees. We can call that the presentation layer. But on the right-hand side here, you've got the data layer, which is what your tools and personalization platforms can work off. And you've got information here about the author, information about me visiting the website. And this can then be used in real time to adjust the experience according to these parameters. So a few more examples. I'll explain this as we go. Here's an example from Amazon's data layer. You can see it's about an order I placed recently. It's going to arrive on Sunday. It knows the amount that I've spent. It knows the product that I bought, and it knows where it's going to be delivered, and all this information. They could use that at any point throughout my experience to remind me perhaps when I log in of when this item is going to be delivered, or to give me a prompt to let me know that the item is on its way. Similarly, this is Steam. It's a popular gaming platform. You can buy and play games. This is their data layer. In their data layer, it shows me things about games my friends like, games that I might like, and games that influencers like. So again, in real time, very, very highly personalized experience for me, and it can show me all of the things that I'm most likely to buy. I also noticed, a bit too late perhaps, but any developers in the room, that's an empty array. I think this is implying that I haven't got any friends. But possibly true. Anyway, once you've got your data layer together, it actually becomes very, very simple to build out these personalized experiences. So here's sort of an illustrative example of how it might work. You've got your data layer on the left-hand side. We've got information like the number of transactions from the current user. If it's an unknown visitor, we've never seen them before, we have no information in the data layer, we might decide that actually we want to focus on lead capture for this user. We put them in our anonymous user segment, and we give them a lead capture experience so we can get their email and nurture that relationship with the customer. If they're a loyal customer and they've purchased 3 or more times, we might start recommending the product. So we've got a bit of information about their purchasing history, and we know what they're likely to buy in the future. We could potentially look at increasing conversion rate for these customers. And finally, if we've got a registered or a recognized user who maybe hasn't bought before, we might want to incentivize them to try converting with us for the first time, so you could offer them a discount. And this is just one example of how you might personalize experience based on one variable, transactions. But if you layer up multiple experiences on top of each other, you'll very quickly find that you end up with truly personalized experiences for a variety of users across your website. So to start the conversation about building a data layer, you'll need to speak to your developers. The questions that you need to be asking them are, what customer data do we hold? Can we surface this information on the website or the app? And what needs to happen to get this information into a data layer? And it's not always easy to develop a good data layer, but I assure you, if you focus your efforts here, there's very little else stopping you from building high quality, personalized experiences, regardless of your size and resources as an organization. I hope this has been a useful introduction on how to sort of break into personalization effectively, but before I wrap up, I wanted to quickly kind of give my 2 cents on where I think the future of personalization might lie and where all larger organizations might want to turn their attention. So something I'm really excited about is the future of this thing called a customer data platform. Could take up a whole separate talk if I were to go into too much detail, and they certainly don't come cheap, so it might be something that you would want to explore once you've sort of exhausted the limits of personalization as we've described it. Simply put, a customer data platform is a centralized repository of all of your customer data. They ingest information from your advertising tools, your CRM, your CMS, maybe customer databases you have elsewhere, and they progressively build up an individual profile for every single one of your customers. This data is then cleaned, stitched together, so we can do some cross-device analysis as well. It can be enriched with third-party data, and we can use predictive analytics to understand things like which products they're likely to buy. We use all of this to create something which a lot of people like to call a 360 view of the customer. These profiles can then be grouped into segments and used not only to activate personalized experiences on the website, as we've discussed, but also activate them across other channels like digital media, email, direct mail, and social for a truly personalized experience across channels. That's all we've got time for CDPs, but if anyone wants to kind of come and chat and geek out during the networking at the end, I would absolutely love to chat. But my key takeaways for today are people want to feel remembered, understood, and in control. That's very important to remember, and that's where personalization can help. A lack of personalization, so using the one message to everybody style of communication in a media that should be one-to-one, like email, can actively damage customer relations. Personalization can help elevate your brand out of the auction by improving customer loyalty and retention. And the real key to delivering effective personalized experiences is making use of stateful customer data, so understanding their history and making sure this is available to your optimization tools. Speak to your developers today about building an effective data layer. And for larger, more mature organizations who may be already doing everything that I've spoken about today, customer data platforms are the future. Thank you very much for listening.